I think I can speak for a lot of people who absolutely love the coverage that Colleen Sullivan and her Turner team did at Roland Garros, the French Open. Outstanding work by all. And Colleen is a freelance producer in sports television, and she joins me on this Building Up Sports Media podcast. On to something. I'm Bryan Fenley. Colleen, glad to have you. Thanks so much for being here. You wear a lot of hats, from being in sports television to being a mother of three, an autism advocate. I really appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me.
How good is your French?
It's not good at all. It's super limited. I got by mostly just telling everyone I don't speak French and can you please speak English? And everyone was pretty accommodating.
What also seemed to be accommodating is the fact that there really is this great fraternity with Turner, and looking at a lot of the BTS shots, the behind the scenes shots on social media that you had, that you guys are having a really good time while also putting forth some great content. When was that moment when you laughed the most during your time spanning in France?
Honestly, it was, I can pinpoint it exactly. We were producing a Tiafo match, and mostly my crew was doing the rally, which was a like red zone style whip around show from the French Open. But we kind of were like the duct tape crew. Like we had our own show, but then we would come in and fill in. Like, oh my gosh, we just one match went long. We need to put this other one somewhere else. We don't have a crew in for it. Can you guys do the match now? And it was not too bad because a lot of times we're just doing sort of an enhanced world feed. So we're taking the world feed, we were putting our own graphics in, some of our own replays. So we were just the sort of Swiss Army knife where we could do anything at a moment's notice. And we often did do anything at a moment's notice. So we were producing one of Francis's matches, and there were pigeons flying around. And clearly, the world feed director, who we could not hear, was really focused on these pigeons. So every time there was a cutaway shot, it was of pigeons. Like you'd think there was going to be a replay. No, it was pigeons. And so one of our tape guys who I've known for a long time, actually, he is my mixed doubles partner, sometimes playing tennis. And he was back there, and I was like, Austin, why don't you make me a pigeon rollout? So he created this whole musical bumper with like all these shots of, as I'm sure if you watched the coverage, you saw a lot of these sort of artsy dancers in a studio that was like sometimes part of different teases and rollouts and stuff in our shows. So he created a whole rollout that was all the dancers, and then every time there was a space for, a tennis play or something, instead we were putting all the pigeon shots in there. And so we took the tennis seriously and we had fun with that, but we also could laugh at ourselves or laugh at other people sometimes in a nice way. And, just have fun with some of the content we were creating as well. So the pigeon rollout was probably the hardest I laughed in the truck.
How many pigeons do you think showed up at Roland Garros over those 2 weeks?
There's actually, I didn't know any of this before I got there. There's a French guy who has a hawk who comes to Roland Garros like every couple of days so that his hawk can chase off the pigeons. But apparently he wasn't there long enough or often enough, because this one particular day, there were just pigeons like flying in the middle of a mat, like someone's trying to serve and a pigeon is going by. And to be honest, I was in the truck most of the time, so I couldn't really say. But in that particular day, I remember thinking like, oh, now I understand why there's a guy whose whole job it is to bring his hawk here and chase pigeons around.
So obviously he wasn't working 24/7. Maybe they needed to get somebody to back him up or work 8-hour shifts to get that all planned out. When you work in tennis or you work in a variety of different sports doing sports television, different, I would think the philosophy from your perspective is that you're obviously around a lot of people who, for fans, they're heroicizing, whether it's a top athlete or a coach. And even with you being in those circles all the time and fans obviously wanting to live that world, and you being used to being around those people, where do you still find this inner feeling of this is incredible, almost a level of you're still heroicizing something about what you get to do, even though you've been to all these places, you've seen all these events that you've worked?
That's a great question because I mean, I've covered a lot of sports in my career, and I would say the vast majority of my career was spent covering basketball. I was a staff AD and then a staff producer at Turner before I left to be a coordinating producer at Fox, and then came back some years later as a freelance producer. So, until recently, everyone, NBA and TNT kind of went hand in hand. And so I think, um, so I've covered a lot of NBA finals and I enjoy that as like a real I coached basketball and played basketball just being like a real student of the game. I enjoy that level of competition, but I won't say that I don't get like awestruck by it anymore because I've done it so many times. I still have an appreciation for it. Roland Garros was a little different because it was the first time Turner had well, I know some many years ago, I think Turner, like well before my time, used to do some rounds of Wimbledon. But this was the first time in a long time for anyone who's worked at Turner within the last 10, 15 years, had really had the opportunity to tackle tennis and to do it for the first time and be a part of that crew who did it for the first time was kind of I had that moment again of being sort of like awestruck by what I was doing. And I come from a big tennis family. My stepdad was a professional tennis player. I think getting the opportunity to cover something like that, that he was so proud of, and he had, like I remember growing up as a kid and watching all the majors with him, and just doing something for the first time and trying to do it a bit differently than it has been done traditionally was still one of those moments where I was like, oh my gosh, this is, as Ernie Johnson always says, a get to job or a get to moment instead of like, I get to do these things. And that was pretty cool.
In you getting to have a stepdad who was enthralled with the sport of tennis, how do you feel like when you're playing mixed doubles now that you're taking some of those teachings tactically in what you're doing on the court?
It's funny. He tried to get me to play tennis as a kid for a long time, and I played basketball and soccer, and I did not start playing tennis till COVID. And so now he comes to my matches like I'm playing a qualifier for Wimbledon or something. He's so invested in my 40-year-old female tennis career now that it's very sweet, and it's like it's a real bonding moment for us. And he'll go out and he was the first person who hit with me before I got good enough to go to clinics and be on teams and all of that. And my younger brother played D1 tennis as well, so everyone was a tennis player except for me. I was very none of my friends played tennis growing up, so I wasn't really interested in it till I got older.
So it was because of the friends, but now that you are picking it up, how much when you were producing tennis at Roland Garros were you thinking about knowing your now experiences in playing, you imagining yourself in certain situations on the court and what that would have been like, say, doing a Tiafo match and saying, "Hey, I'm down low 40, just like Tiafo. What am I going to do here? Like, what would he do here?" Sort of.
I do think I've always been really good with sports strategy, like every sport I've played. Like the execution might have been lacking, but I was always coaches award, hustle award, like all the awards you get for being a decent athlete, but not the best on the team, but maybe being the one who understands the game the best. And I think there were a lot of times where I would have these thoughts of like, oh, well, why didn't he just go down the line there or something? And some things seemed kind of obvious. Some of them were a bit more required a bit more abstract thinking behind them, I guess. But I would always feel good when I'm like, let's say I'm working with Patrick McEnroe and I'll say something to him. He's like, oh, I literally was just thinking the same thing. Or I'm working with Chris Eubanks and I'm like, why would you do this instead of this? And he's like, that's a great question. Like I would have done this. And so being able to talk the strategy or X's and O's with, as we were saying earlier, like I just came off of a show, NBA Finals Film Room. Like I love that show because I'm talking X's and O's with former NBA coaches and like really just having the opportunity to ask questions because I still am learning things, but also have these conversations with former coaches and players and things like that and be like, ooh, I was right about that. Like that, it's kind of a good feeling. So I've really enjoyed that aspect of it. The one funny thing I'll say is there was another producer there, and she said some years ago she was doing a tournament with Lindsay Davenport, and somebody was, in her words, just hitting like real softball serves, and she was like, "Oh, I could definitely hit those." And Lindsay's like, "There's no chance you'd be able to return those." So just that perspective too of being, it's a bit different when you're watching in the truck than when you're down on the court and you see how fast things are really going. But all of that is just, it's again, it's like a get to opportunity in my career that's been a lot of fun.
How would you compare the way you mentally archive working events and how you mentally archive competing in a tennis match?
Mm. I try to be, Ted Lasso, a little bit of a goldfish when it comes to my tennis matches. I will, there's certain, I just played a match for the first time in like a month this past weekend. And we won, but mostly because my mixed doubles partner is really good. And there were things I took away from it. Like I did this really well. Like I still played really well at the baseline, could really use some work on my volleying. Like I felt a little out of rhythm because I hadn't played a match in a month. So a lot of times I don't, in the moment, I'm kind of hard on myself, but I don't really think a whole lot about them more than 30 minutes after I get off the court. I think producing, I try to have a similar mindset. Like, I mean, I don't like to make mistakes and I try not to make mistakes and I hope I don't make very many mistakes, but everyone makes mistakes. And this is I talk about this a lot. Like when I came up in television, it was a lot of working with directors who yelled and screamed and threw highlighters at monitor walls and things like that. And I was like, I will never be like that. And I think for the most part, our industry has changed a lot where that's not really acceptable behavior anymore. Like you still get a little bit of it here and there, but it's no longer the norm. And so for me, like I'm probably harder on myself than anybody else is, but I'm also I feel like pretty understanding if someone on the crew makes a mistake. Like I'm not going to lose my mind over it and I'm not really even going to say anything about it unless it's something that's consistent and then we'll talk after the fact. But I think when it comes to just sort of mentally archiving shows we've done, I do think about those after the fact, but more in a sense of I really liked the way we did this. Like let me try to do that again in the next show, or here's how I think we could improve this. How do we change that going into the next show to improve it? And I think in that sense, just being like a student of the game of the sports I'm covering, I'm also trying to study the shows we've done and how we can improve on them and make them better. And then just take away all the positive things we did as well.
Innately, it makes so much sense that you would be hard on yourself. I notice that as a common denominator for a lot of people in this industry because there is this drive to want to be perfect because of the pride you have in the product and the want and the desire to put on a good show and to put out the best type of content that you can. You might be hard on yourself on that front. How do you allow yourself to focus on being kind on yourself when you're at home as a mother of three?
I think for the most part, I'm usually pretty kind on myself. I have my oldest son is on the autism spectrum, and so that having your first child be one with special needs, and now he's thriving, but when he was younger, it was constant therapy. It was a lot of hard work on his part, our part, like the family's part, the therapist part, everything to get where he is now. And it taught me so much about patience and being kind and not necessarily, I was always going to be kind to him. He's my son, but being kind on myself if I feel overwhelmed or frustrated. But I'm also the type of person who like doesn't stop long enough to be like, I am overwhelmed. I need a break. I'm like, okay, go, 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 go. How do we fix this? Like right after he was diagnosed, I didn't really like grieve it the way some people do because I was so focused on like, so what do we do? Like, what's the next step? And I think that helped. I'm not saying like I do understand a lot of people who have a grieving process with something like that, but I never felt like, oh, I've lost something. I was like, here's a challenge for our family, and what are we going to do to help Jackson be successful? And obviously, it's worked because he's super successful, and speaking of kind, is probably like the kindest person I've ever known. So it all has worked out well for us. There's still, small challenges here and there, but I think he's taught me a lot about being kind and being kind to yourself. So.
Beyond the kindness, where else do you see parts of yourself in who he is as a person?
Wow. He is, gosh, he's extremely intelligent. I'm not going to say, I mean, I consider myself to be intelligent, but it's unlike anything I've experienced with his recall for certain details. Like if you want to show him a random outline of a country or a random country's flag that no one's ever heard of, he's going to know what the country is. He's going to know what the flag is. His recall for details and his memory are amazing. I mean, I hope he gets a little bit of it from me, but I certainly am nowhere near where he is. I honestly, I think the kindness part is, I hope, one of the lasting things about my personality that has come out in him. Although, there's I could say so many great things about him is just he's just a really special kid. And he's not like he likes sports. He's a good swimmer. He tries everything and he enjoys being part of a team. I wouldn't say he's driven by sports the way I am or the way his younger sister is, but he makes up for it. Not even that that's a downfall, but he has strengths in other areas, and it's such a honor to get to see him grow in all those other areas as well.
Unquestionably. And when you get all three of your kids together, what has to happen for them to put the biggest of smiles on your face?
Oh my gosh. Hopefully just getting along. No, they get along pretty well. I don't know. Honestly, I enjoy going and like doing activities with them. And so one day, uh well, like just on Thursday, I took my younger two to go see Inter Miami and Porto play at Mercedes-Benz. And just my Jackson was in a camp all day and he doesn't really care about soccer anyways. So he was like, no, I'd rather go to main event with my camp. You guys have fun at the soccer game, which was great. Like they wanted to go. He didn't. He had something else to do. But just going out and having those experiences with them, that's something that makes me happy. That's something that puts a smile on my face. Like getting to be with them, like my daughter, Messi is her idol. So she's got to, like, we're pretty close. Like Mercedes-Benz was not that full, unfortunately, but we got really good seats because of it. She got to see him score, like being there for those moments, getting to experience those moments with my kids is, that always makes me smile. I mean, there's so many great things. They're frustrating at times too, but I mean, for the most part, I'm very fortunate to have three kids who are all kind and generally get along with each other. So,
I like how you put the emphasis on generally. Like
yeah.
there might be a stipulation or something that comes into play as to when that happens. But yes, the joy of you all being together is where I can just kind of sense that love really coming out. When you're on the road and when you're not there and you can't go to a soccer match with, say, an event that you have that's going to take you on the road. How does your love come out for your kids when you can't physically be in their presence?
Yeah, that's tough. And it is something that I struggle with, although I've always been in this industry, so they're pretty used to mom's work schedule. And I mean, honestly, it's just a lot of FaceTiming. I know when all of their stuff is. So even when I was in Paris for 3 weeks, I knew, oh, Harper has a scrimmage this day, or the kids all have a swim meet tonight, or something like that. And so I would just set like alarms on my phone because 6 hour difference, but to know that they were awake and I could, even if I couldn't FaceTime them, if I was doing a show or something, I could text them, hey, good luck at the swim meet tonight. Let me know how it goes. And then checking in with them after the, my sons are a lot better about texting than my daughter, but just following up with her, how was the game today or whatever, and just letting them know that I'm thinking about them and I'm supporting them, even if I'm across an ocean and are going to be away for 3 weeks. I don't think I would like to think that they always know that they're loved and that they're being thought about and that I'm being supportive, even if I'm not there physically.
The way that you show that you're there in terms of your support, whether you're there physically or not, I noticed in like on Instagram where it was really cool how you have a list of all the great attributes that your children have in one and two and three and four and five and to go on from there. But there has to be in your work, there is this like, okay, let's recap what we just did. We just did an event. Let's go over things, the diagnostic report, whatever you want to call it. Then you get a chance to hear whether you're there physically or not from one of your kids in their sporting events, and then they get the opportunity to tell you how it went. When you get that chance and you let them speak their mind on whether the game went well or the game didn't go well, how rewarding are those moments, those learning experiences from your kids in those events as you being a mom?
Yeah, I will say of all of my kids, my daughter is probably the one who goes into the most detail because she is so soccer obsessed and that's mostly a good thing. Sometimes I need her to be doing some other things other than focusing on soccer, but for the most part, that's been a really big, good part of her life. And I do enjoy hearing, as I have said multiple times already, I've coached. I'm like definitely a student of the game with pretty much every sport that I cover. And just hearing her work through some of those things. Like, sometimes you get the teenage girl or like, oh, well, this girl was so rude and she was saying XYZ to me and blah, blah, blah. But most of the time I'm getting more of, I think, she's always been a defender. They're trying to move her to midfield. So she'll say, well, I could have done this and this and this better. And I was like, okay, well, what did you do good? Like, okay, all you've been telling me is what you could have done better. What did you do well today? What are you proud of today? And then, that totally kind of changes her opinion on what happened in the game. She starts thinking, like, oh, well, my first touch was really good. Oh, my passing was really good. As much as I want them to learn from the sports and grow, and they're definitely doing that, is to also remember, even if you lost that championship game or her team is very good. So for a while they went on this undefeated tournament streak, and then they had three girls get hurt, and then they weren't even making the finals of any of their tournaments. And that was tough for these girls who were so used to winning all the time. But I would ask my daughter, like, okay, so what are you learning from this experience? Yes, when everyone's back and healthy, y'all are probably going to be very good again. And they were very good again. But they had a tough road for about 9 months. And I think it was actually super helpful. Like, I think she learned a lot during that time. And I would, aside from just being upset about losses, I would always say, again, well, what did you do well? And what did you learn from this game? Not just, oh, this sucks. We have lost our last 3 games.
During those highs and lows of being a mother, how has motherhood introduced you to a whole new perspective of what it takes to be over the course of your career, whether it be a coordinating producer, a freelance TV producer, but the idea of being a mom and how that impacts the way you might do your work and in giving you another perspective.
That is probably one of the easiest questions so far is of patience. Like I am hands down far more patient now than I was like when I first started it in the industry. And I also think when you're younger, you feel this need to like prove yourself and be perfect and not allow mistakes and like kind of get on other people if they make mistakes and like, oh, I'm just being tough on them because like all that there's a time and a place for some of it. Certainly, some of the things I experienced coming up, like I'm glad that that's no longer the norm. But I also realize, like, okay, this is not, I'm not trying to say I love my job, but I'm not out here curing cancer. Like, you put things in perspective, and there's so many things bigger than television or sports television. And while I love it, it's not, I'm not going to lose sleep over the fact that there was a wrong stat on a graphic or something like that. Like, I get that people make mistakes. And unless it's something that's consistent, it's like, okay, cool, let's move on. Like, I'm not going to freak out about it. I think, um, I think people enjoy working with me because I am patient with people and I do try to make our shows fun. And it makes me feel good when I walk into the studio at Turner and people are like, "Oh, yay, the people's producer is here," because they know I'm gonna like it's gonna be fun, it's gonna be efficient. I'm gonna get them out at a decent hour. But more importantly, it's going to be a good show and we're going to have fun doing the show. And I think like that's so important to me on all of the shows we do is that not just is the talent happy, but is the crew happy? Because I think a lot of times people just focus on like, oh, well, let's make the talent happy. Well, your crew is just as important. And like, having an environment that they want to be a part of and feel like they're included and part of it is just as important as having a perfect show or making sure the talent is happy. I think it's very possible to make everyone happy and to have a fun show and have a good show. Like you can do all of those things at the same time. And I'm not sure everybody thinks that way, but I've certainly found it to be pretty successful throughout my career.
Thank goodness for you, because there are a lot of people that don't seem to feel like all of those virtues that you pointed out can all come in at the same time and intertwine to do what you do. And if we focus a little bit on your rise from coming out of college in over the course of your career, when have you felt it most imperative to listen to what your gut says? I'm sure that over the course of your career, depending upon where you were and where you wanted to go, people always have advice, and some is great and some is well appreciated and well received. But with all that said, when have you felt that it's a prerogative for you, most important, to listen to your inner instincts and that you look back and you're like, that was a good idea?
Yeah, I think I don't know if everyone would agree that it was a good idea, but I think there have been some times in my career where, and I don't know if this is because of who I am or because of who I've become and being a mom and having a son on the autism spectrum, but I feel this real, and it's not even a conscious need, but I can feel it when it's happening to stand up for people who don't have a voice. Like I'm not trying to step up if someone can take care of things themselves, but there's been particularly with like younger women are in our industry who may have gone through some I don't know, awkward situations or awkward relationships with different people in the industry or things that made them feel uncomfortable, but they didn't think that they had the experience to really speak out or anything like that. I think for me, like I've always trusted my gut on that, where I'm like, I try to help them through it, but not just by giving advice, but also helping them take actionable steps for, and I'm not saying like every like little run of the mill thing. There's been some bigger, more complicated situations, like I said, particularly with like younger women in the industry that I don't know if I would say I like formally mentored, but that I had worked with a lot early on in their career. And for me, it's maybe because I'm older or because I'm a mom, or I have more confidence in myself and my spot in this network. But I'm the first one that's there that's like, this is what it's like with Jackson's diagnosis. I'm like, so what are we doing next? How are we remedying this situation? This is what needs to happen. This is what needs to happen. And like literally have some friends who will do like a check-in with me and be like, okay, this is what I wrote. And sometimes it's a good thing. Like one of the women have worked with throughout most of her career was trying to get a promotion. And she's like, okay, here's my list. Like, how do I say this without sounding this way? How should I word this? But the same thing with difficult situations in our industry is that I've always trusted my gut when it comes to things like that. And whether it was me personally, which thankfully hasn't happened in a really long time, or some other women in the industry, I think I've always been sort of a champion to help them through whatever the situation is and to do what's right, honestly.
Good on you to have that compass because there's so much that you're already doing, but then to take on that as well. And it's not even taking on that, it just is who you are. And to be that backbone and that support for others. If I may, I'll leave you with this one last question. And this theme I feel like we're taking from this conversation is the proactivity for you when things aren't where they need to be, you seeing the the perks of when it's important to be proactive and how that's shown itself to be very successful, be it with Jackson and what you did to step up for him. And on that note, being a part and doing Autism Speaks Kindness Connection and just going out and being there for him. And then also talking to other people who might, as mothers, be going through the same situation, just like you've been there for people in the industry looking for that support. Why does this matter to you so much that you get this platform and that you give back, be it with your colleagues and work, those coming up in the business, and then you see your son and how much of an impact that you have and are having on him?
I mean, honestly, I think a lot of it probably stems from Jackson and knowing that there were some people who first helped me get started with like what our plan of attack was going to be after he was diagnosed. And then just knowing what that feeling is like when you get the diagnosis and you feel overwhelmed, you're like, okay, where am I even going to start? And so having someone there to like give you actionable steps makes it seem so less overwhelming. And you're like, okay, just take this first step. Just do this. After you do this, we'll tackle the next, whatever, everything else on the list. And I think, while it isn't really like a conscious decision I'm making of like, oh, I have to go out here and fix the world. Like, I know I can't do that, but I know that I have a lot of knowledge or contacts, even if it's just like putting people in touch with other people that I know are going to be super helpful to them. Like, that's an easy thing to do. And why wouldn't I take 5 minutes to make that connection? I have actually, my director in Paris, someone said, oh, like, or his wife was joking with him about something about how he needed to be better at networking. And he was like, well, I know Colleen. That's all that really matters. It's because when he was looking twice, when he was looking for jobs, like, he's great. He didn't need a whole lot of help, but he needed that first step in someplace. And I'm always happy to do that for, talented people in the industry. And I think I don't know. I think I've probably always been that way. Like service to others was a big part of my family growing up, and we did a lot of community service. And then in a sorority, I did a lot of community service. But I think honestly, a lot of me realizing that I had my experience could help others, a lot of that came from Jackson's diagnosis, and then wanting to their recently diagnosed families and saying, I know you're overwhelmed, but let's just start here. And it makes it so much more manageable. And I think, kind of the same with certain situations in our industry that I may have tried to help people with, or like I said, even if it comes down to networking, or, ooh, I know this place is looking for this position, and hey, I know you, and I think you'd be a good fit for it. Like, let me introduce you to the hiring manager.
You're one of the good ones in this industry, and some powerful words that you shared in regards to just how massively important that relationship with your son Jackson has had on just not only your family life, but then how it's helped you see things and wanting to give back in other areas of your life as well, be that with your work in sports media or in other facets, friends and family alike. So in wrapping up this conversation, this really was an inspiring journey to look at what you've done and who you've become. And I really appreciate the time. Colleen Sullivan, I'm Bryan Fenley. Really thankful for the openness in this conversation and the ability to go the places that I led you to through these questions and really getting a deep understanding of who you are and what drives you. So I appreciate you being so open about that and sharing that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.